Hey guys, welcome back. This is a story about what if Naruto befriended Kurama early. After a life-changing event, Naruto meets Kurama early and they become partners and even good friends with a better outlook on life. He meets many who want to join him and help achieve their dreams and goals together. Among those friends are many beautiful women. Realize just how important he is to them. Before we start, thank you for all of the support. It really means a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. You can suggest a Naruto fanfiction with a link in the comments if you want me to read it, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic and support them for making this fanfic. So let's start. Chapter 10. An unexpected gift. I know I apply warnings of adult themes in this story at the beginning of each chapter, but I feel I should empathize in this particular chapter that there will be a scene of attempted rape toward the end. It's brief, but any listener who's disturbed by that should take caution. Warning. This story will contain graphic depictions of violence and gore, mature language, and sexual themes. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or any of its characters. Chapter 10. An unexpected gift. Inside Naruto's mindscape, Kurama found it hard to believe, but she had to admit to herself that she was actually worried about Naruto. The giant demon fox pondered over this rare emotion as she slowly walked on all fours among gigantic trees through the large and densely forested portion of Naruto's mindscape. She wasn't walking aimlessly either. She had one destination in mind: the presence of Naruto's overflowing chakra directly ahead, and the fox could tell from her link with him that the small blonde human was extremely angry. She only felt worried like this once when Naruto ate that shy girl's bento of doom. While it would be easy to chalk that up to being simply concerned for her own life since she was linked to her host's lifespan after all, she'd be lying to herself. Kurama finally decided that she had come to care for her container a little bit. She would never admit that to him anytime soon, if ever. Not too long ago, she watched Naruto take his anger out on that old pervert and then disappear to the Hokage monument to hide so he could come into the mindscape and let out some steam. She was rather intrigued when he suddenly appeared next to her in the mindscape and only spared a glance toward her before running off into the dense forest. She decided to follow after him after an hour of not hearing or seeing any sign of him. Breaking out of her thoughts, the giant fox began to hear sounds of clashing metals and she realized, with some irritation, what he was doing. Foolish boy. She grumbled, picking up her pace. Before long, Kurama arrived at the base of what was easily the largest and tallest tree in the forest. It dwarfed even the gigantic fox in such way that it was more like a normal-sized fox sitting next to an average-sized tree by comparison. She could now clearly hear the sharp metallic sounds of swords clashing against each other, and glanced up to see sparks flying a long way up the tree trunk. From that height, no one would survive the fall. The fox silently sat down on her haunches, her tails gently swaying around behind her, and watched with focused crimson eyes. Far up the tree trunk, a whiskered blonde boy was sticking to it with chakra in his feet, his two sabers flashing as they blocked a powerful overhead strike from a rather vicious-looking clone of him with its own sabers. He was doing what would be considered an extreme version of the chakra control exercise, tree walking. Kurama had taught him that this was one way to improve his chakra control by fighting in intense close quarters on a vertical surface for at least an hour or more. Blocking the clone's twin sabers over his head with only one of his, Uzumaki Naruto stabbed the other blade at the clone's torso, which it dodged at the last second as it gave up its attack. Not giving its creator time to rest, it tried to split his attention by stabbing at Naruto's inner thigh with its left saber while simultaneously swinging the right one horizontally toward his neck. Naruto easily parried the strike aimed for his thigh with a flick of his right hand as he ducked under the other saber with ease to dash in for a shoulder tackle that forced his clone back several feet. This left it open for a rather vicious slash as he swung both sabers diagonally toward each other like a scissor, cutting the clone from its right shoulder to the left hip. The shocked look on the clone's face before it dispelled seemed to snap Naruto of his anger as he let out a tired sigh. "How long have I been doing this?" he mumbled to no one in particular. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he started this. He just ran as fast as he could to this tree, created 10 overpowered and rather angry clones of himself and spent all the time dodging and attacking the clones all over the vertical surface of this massive tree until he finally whittled them down to nothing. They didn't leave him unscathed either, as he felt his many wounds closing up slowly. He didn't understand why he got injured in his own mindscape even though they didn't transfer to his physical body. Kurama was not sure either, so they decided not to test any theory on what might happen if he actually died in the mindscape. That was a question he would have to ask Inoichi someday. As his wounds closed up, he felt extreme fatigue set in now that he wasn't running on rage-induced adrenaline anymore. Unable to move, he numbly dropped the sabers from his hands, which disappeared in wisps of smoke in the air below him, before he slowly peeled off the trunk like a failing adhesive tape as his chakra stopped its flow to his feet. Too tired to prepare for landing on the ground, he had to let his body continue its aimless freefall, hoping his abrupt meeting with the ground would not actually kill his real body. Closing his eyes, he prepared for what would be a painful impact, but he landed against something soft and warm sooner than he expected. Opening his eyes, Naruto was surprised to find himself looking up at a pair of large glowing crimson eyes showing clear irritation. It didn't take long for him to realize that Kurama caught him as he fell and he was lying in her open hand. "Thanks. Sorry for the trouble," he could only say under the fox's annoyed gaze. "Moron," she grumbled as she slightly shook her head. Naruto couldn't say anything back because he knew she was right. There was no reason to risk himself like that. The fox slowly moved his body up to lay it on the top of her head, surprising him. As soon as she felt he was secure enough, she turned around and began walking back in the direction she had come from. Naruto took the time to enjoy the soft fur underneath his back, the gentle breeze whipping over him, and the scenery moving by as the fox weaved her way through the trees. Neither of them was saying anything for the moment. "I'm surprised you let me ride on you. I peg you as too prideful for that," the boy mumbled softly, unsure if the fox heard him. "As long as this doesn't go to your head, you're the only one I would willingly allow that honor." Kurama calmly replied as if it wasn't a big deal. Naruto allowed a small smile as he watched the branches and leaves above him move by at a brisk pace. "So what brought on that self-destructive streak? Considering how much we planned that old pervert's punishment beforehand, I figured you'd be happy when you executed the rather simple plan." The fox decided to satisfy her curiosity about her container's state of mind as they passed the time walking. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the mention of that man. "It's hard to describe. Part of me felt good, but most of me is still angry. I mean, he left us to our own devices for all these years, and you had to deal with being stuck inside a helpless and defenseless child hoping I would be lucky enough to survive until I was able to take care of myself. We could have both died multiple times, but we got by with luck. If Jiraiya had been around, we wouldn't have had to worry about if our deaths were going to be a certainty or not every single day back then." The fox had to admit she was surprised her container thought about her well-being that much. He included her in his life as if it was a natural thing now. She allowed a small grin at the boy's caring nature, one that the boy wasn't able to see from where he was lying. "So we got a small bit of revenge on that pervert, but I realized now that I'm still dwelling too much on our past treatment, and no matter how much we punish or lash out at Jiraiya for his negligence, it's not going to change anything that happened. Only thing we can do is just move on and make do with whatever we have." Naruto finished before he winced when the sunlight hit his face full force when they finally exited the forest entirely. "So revenge doesn't do anything?" Kurama quizzed almost rhetorically as she slowly laid down on the soft grass, resting her head on her crossed arms with Naruto still lying on her forehead. "I'm not sure. It's not like Jiraiya murdered someone precious to me in cold blood. I just know my anger didn't lessen even one bit even after I knocked his nads around. I wonder if Sasuke Tem thought about what'd happen if he managed to kill Itachi." The fox gave a lazy shrug. "I honestly don't care about that wretched Uchiha. All I have seen from my observations of that boy is that he is willing to do anything possible to gain power as quickly as possible and damn the consequences afterward. He is likely not going to let anything get in his way, so I repeat my warning about him. Do not show your back to him even for an instant." Naruto nodded weakly. After a few minutes of silence, he felt his body getting its strength back. Not wishing to test the extent of Kurama's generosity, he got up and gently jumped off. Thanks for the ride, it felt nice seeing what the world's most powerful entity sees. Naruto teased with some faux flattery. Kurama just snorted and allowed a small grin. Looks like the old pervert is coming up on your position. Time for you to get out of here. Alright. Thanks for letting me know. Also thanks for telling me what mom used to call Jiraiya. It's going to annoy the hell out of him. Naruto replied with a vicious grin that made the demon fox proud. Kurama chuckled as she watched the boy vanish from the mindscape. She then closed her eyes for a nap. Naruto can handle himself against the old pervert. Konoha's Hokage monument on Yondaimo's head. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he found himself in his lotus pose on top of his father's stone bust. He took a moment to enjoy the beautiful night view of Konoha from the monument before he decided to break the peaceful silence. Oi, Aro Sennin. He grinned evilly as he heard a large man facefo out of a tree onto the ground behind him. The hell. There's no way you could know about the Aro Sennin roared as he got up from the ground before he stopped suddenly, realizing it was a trap. Naruto turned to give his godfather a foxy grin. Gotcha. Guess what I'll be calling you from now on, Aro Sennin. Jiraiya immediately fell on all fours with a dark cloud forming overhead. First your parents, and now you. Am I ever going to escape that name? If you weren't such a damn pervert like the fox told me from her time inside mom, you might have been able to get away with a different nickname. Just think of this as part of the payback for leaving me at the mercy of this village for most of my early years. Naruto evenly said as he glanced back out over the village. Jiraiya flinched at the mention of his negligence. Gaki, for what it's worth, I'm really sorry. I'd give you some bullshit excuses like having to maintain my spy network, but the fact is that I was terrified of the notion of raising a child. I left you in Sarutobi-sensei's care hoping he would give you a better childhood than what I thought I could give you considering I basically do a lot of my spying in bars and brothels. Jiraiya tried to explain before he was surprised by Naruto's head snapping sharply toward him with his blue eyes turning icy and his face twisting into rage. Better childhood. Growing up in an orphanage hated and bullied by everyone there while getting as little food and care as they could get away with until I was kicked out. Living by myself in a broken down apartment building while they gleefully vandalized it until there wasn't a single inch of that building left to damage. Having my existence cursed and deliberately ignored by everyone around me no matter where I go. I tried to commit suicide 4 times, for fuck's sake. What kind of better childhood would force a 5-year-old to consider that option? Naruto roared at his godfather, his eyes flickering between ice blue and crimson. Jiraiya's face was ashen by the end of the boy's rant. You tried. The toad sage managed to choke out before he was stopped when Naruto let out a frustrated exhale and averted his gaze from the white-haired man with pain evident in his eyes. And the worst part of this. I never knew why this was happening to me, even right after when I tried to take my own life. It took a demon fox stuck in my stomach to save me from making the worst mistake I ever made, and I never knew that for another several years. It's a good timing that things picked up for me and I made friends after that incident because I never had to think about trying to kill myself again. While things did get better and I finally understood why this was happening to me, I'm hard pressed to trust your or even Hokage Gigi word over the foxes. So far, aside from the fact the old man let me be trained by the Kyuubi, you two have made crappy decisions regarding me, and she has made all the right ones. He stated with a glare, making Jiraiya wince visibly. He then turned back to the view of the village below him. I wonder how the entire village would feel if they find out that the demon fox that nearly destroyed this place did a better job of raising the son of the man that saved them. He finished by sweeping both his arms out over the scenery. Jiraiya's gaze fell to the ground, ashamed of what he allowed to happen to his favorite student's child. Naruto, if you don't want me around, I would the toad sage tried to offer before he was interrupted. I didn't say that, Aro Sennin. Sure, you and Hokage Gigi were naive fools to think I would have been okay back then. However, it happened already and we can't change that. I just wanted you to know the kind of crap I went through to get here so you'd understand why I was feeling a little peeved at you. I still am actually, but the fact is that dad and mom still appointed you as my godfather and I'd like to get to know you. Plus, you're one of the legendary Sannin and I'd be stupid to turn down training from you if you're still offering. Even if you're a damn pervert. Naruto stated with a small smile. Jiraiya was stunned by this child's maturity and he was happy that Naruto still wanted to give this a try. Still, he felt he needed to correct this boy on one detail. I'm really sorry and thank you for your forgiveness, Gaki. However, I'm not just a damn pervert. I'm a super pervert. The super pervert bellowed at the top of his lungs out to the entire village before striking an odd pose. Almost instantly, lights flickered on in the village below and random shouts of anger echoed up to the two on the monument. Naruto had to slap a palm to his forehead. He willingly admitted that. Just what the hell did I get myself into with this old pervert? A few days later at the secret training ground. Alright Gaki, time to see what you're made of. Just come at me with some of the stuff you've learned the past couple years and we'll go from there on how to train this summer. Jiraiya announced as he set down his travel bag and large scroll on the ground next to him. Really? So soon after arriving, Naruto quizzed with a raised eyebrow, but he went ahead and set his bag down as well and began stretching his body in preparation. They haven't even unlocked the small shack at the edge of the training field yet. The way I see it, you only have 3 months to practice controlling the Kyuubi's chakra, however from what Sarutobi-sensei told me, you can only use that shroud for up to 30 minutes. The rest of the time will be spent practicing whatever the fox and I teach you. That includes sealing since I've been told you have some interest in that and I'm a seal master, though not as good as your parents were. I still have to do my spying so I'll have to leave Konoha as soon as we get back until your next break. I'd like to at least make up for being a crappy godfather up until now by teaching you as much as I can for the next 3 months. The older man stated as matter-of-factly before he stretched as well, feeling some of his bones pop. It had been a while since he sparred with someone. At least I should be glad there will be no women nearby for miles. I heard stories from the fox about dad complaining to mom about how you left him alone often to peek on women, Aro Senin. Naruto retorted with a smirk at his godfather's annoyed expression. Do you remember anything about this guy's capabilities? He inwardly asked his tenant. He primarily uses fire and earth jutsu. In addition to that, he can summon toads and knows specialized jutsu from the Toad clan. As powerful as your father was, this old pervert usually gave Minato a hard time in their spars. You will not beat him as you are now. I know. Just thought I'd at least make him put in a little effort if I can help it. Though, it's too bad I don't have any element that would overcome his elemental jutsu. Naruto finished his stretching and walked into the center of the clearing while his godfather did the same, both checking each other out. This Gaki walks with confidence and grace. What Sarutobi-sensei said about this kid's training in taijutsu and kenjutsu is true then. I'll enjoy seeing a taijutsu style I've never seen before up close. Jiraiya thought as he stood with a relaxed pose in front of Naruto. Damn, this guy knows he's going to kick my ass, and I can't even say otherwise. Guess I'll try a straightforward approach for now. The blonde thought as he bent forward with his feet wide and arms hanging between his legs, as if he was a beast posing to strike. He channeled chakra to his hands to sharpen his fingernails into claws. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow with an intrigued smirk at the display. They stood still for a long moment before Naruto finally broke into a fast dash on all fours toward his still unmoving opponent. He then jumped and spun acrobatically toward his opponent's head with a vicious spin kick. Jiraiya lazily put an arm up to block the kick and Naruto had to grunt in slight pain. It was like hitting a metal pole. Not wanting to give Jiraiya any chance, he reached out and grabbed the blocking arm while he was still in the air and pulled with all his effort as he fell back down to the ground. Jiraiya was momentarily surprised as he felt himself lurching forward before he recovered and decided to let the boy play this out. Upon landing on the ground, Naruto used the momentum to pull with all his effort to throw him overhead, which impressed the much larger and heavier man. He let himself fly before recovering and landing gracefully on the opposite side of his godson from where he was standing earlier. Naruto used this time to jump toward the powerful sage's back for another kick. Jiraiya wouldn't allow that as he spun around and tried to backhand the boy in the air. His opponent saw it coming and had to block the massive fist with both arms which spun him in the air from the older man's greater strength. Naruto, ever the opportunist, used the spinning to add momentum to a vicious overhead kick aimed right for Jiraiya's forehead. The older man simply grabbed the boy's ankle before spinning him around once before tossing him far into the air. Naruto recovered and landed on his feet some distance away, watching his godfather warily. So that's the Raging Fox, huh? I'll admit it's an interesting style that seems to be focused on feints and moments of opportunity. A major flaw with that is that you're facing a large opponent and I already know your striking and kicking kata aren't effective against me, so I just have to watch out for your grappling skills. I'll help you work on how to take better advantage of openings your opponents leave until you're sufficiently large and strong enough to take on adults. Until then, I can tell you'll kick your peers' asses easily. Now show me some jutsu you like to use. Jiraiya stated, before beckoning his godson with a come-hither motion. Naruto smirked at his newest sensei's praise before forming the familiar hand sign for Kage Bunshin. Two clones poofed into existence on both sides of their creator. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. I knew you'd have massive chakra reserves, but to know that jutsu already is impressive. Are those all you can make? Nope. Not even remotely close. I can go into hundreds easily. I just wanted them out here to do some collaboration jutsu, so be ready to dodge. I'd hate to have a dead godfather a few days after meeting him. Naruto teased with a smirk while his godfather snorted. You're good, Gaki, but you're still a long way from even grazing me. Naruto didn't respond, instead he glanced at the clones and gave a short nod. All three of them took out a shuriken each and flicked them toward Jiraiya. Immediately afterward, they all blurred through hand signs. Shuriken Kage no Bunshin. All three yelled out. Jiraiya was surprised this kid knew one of his sensei's favorite jutsu. The three shuriken multiplied into hundreds as the three blondes pumped in a decent amount of chakra. Jiraiya smirked and was about to go through the hand seals for Doryuheki Earth-style wall, to protect himself from the shuriken hail when he was surprised to see the three blondes immediately go through another set of hand seals. Futon. Repusho Gale Palm. The three Narutos clapped their hands together and a large gust of wind blew out in front of them. It wasn't strong enough to do more than ruffle Jiraiya, but it sped up the hundreds of shuriken hurling toward him considerably. He cursed as he didn't have enough time to raise an earth wall safely now. Instead he did a sealess Moguragakure, hiding like a mole, jutsudo quickly sink underground under all the shurikens screaming over his head. As quickly as he got under, he popped back up and glanced back in time to see the shuriken shred a large portion of the forest at the edge of the clearing into splinters. The Toad Sage had to sweat a little as he briefly imagined himself caught in that. He then glanced back to see Naruto's clones have dispelled from the chakra they used and the blonde was now creating just one more. However, the sage could feel this clone had much more chakra. He quickly took himself out of the ground and prepared for whatever this kid might have been planning. The two Narutos smirked and began going through hand seals. He noticed they were using two different sets of seals. One's fire, a very strong one, and the other is wind. Oh fuck. Kaden. Karyu Endant Dragon Flame Bullet. Futon. Datapa Great Breakthrough. Naruto and his clone yelled before they inhaled as much as they could. Jiraiya took this brief moment to blur through hand seals. Both blondes then expelled, one blowing out gale force wind and the other blew out an enormous stream of white-hot fire. The jutsu then combined to create a gigantic wave of white inferno, instantly scorching the ground underneath as it screamed toward Jiraiya. Doten. Taju Doryuheki. Jiraiya spat out three successive streams of mud on the ground in front of him. As the massive wave of white-hot fire neared, the Toad Sage could feel the sheer heat almost overwhelming him. Finally, the first stream formed into a thick earth wall rising high into the air, followed immediately by the second and third, creating a thick triple-layered earth wall just before the inferno crashed with a loud roar. Even with protection from the fire, Jiraiya winced as he felt himself almost burning from the intense heat and his breathing was getting short due to the dwindling oxygen in the air. The first layer of the wall already melted, and the second was starting to go. Damn that brat. His fire affinity's so high he was able to make that fire jutsu burn white hot like sensei could. I'll actually have to put in a tiny bit of effort. Jiraiya cursed inwardly as he brought his hands together to prepare a technique. Naruto smirked as he stopped the jutsu, and the clone popped due to depleting its allotted chakra. He knew that collaboration would be powerful, but it cost a lot of chakra. He'll have to save that for when he needed to make an area effect attack, or as a last resort. He was in awe of the intensity of his combined jutsu as he watched the earth walls Jiraiya created crumble into a smoldering pile of molten dirt and rocks. He was reminded he didn't have time to admire anything when his instincts screamed at him to jump. He did so a split second before a pair of hands reached up through the ground toward where his feet would have been a moment ago. Surprised for an instant, he shook it off and blurred through hand seals while he was still in the air. Kaden. Gokakyu Great Fireball. Naruto yelled as he spat out a large ball of fire that hurtled toward the ground where Jiraiya's hands were still sticking out. Upon impact, it blew up in a massive explosion that nearly blew the blonde out of the air. He couldn't help but feel that was a feint. As if on cue, Jiraiya appeared behind him in the air and, before the blonde could react, smashed him to the ground with a vicious hammer strike. He bounced on the ground on impact and laid still for a moment while Jiraiya landed nearby with a serious expression on his face. His unmoving godson suddenly dispelled, but this didn't surprise him as he casually glanced behind to see Naruto try to hit him with a flying kick from a blind spot. He simply swung his fist backward to smash into the boy's stomach, making him fly back, only for this one to disappear into smoke as well. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow before he heard hands clapping together and snapped back to see Naruto standing right in front of him finishing a sequence of hand seals. Futon. Daitapa, the blonde yelled as he expelled his jutsu at point blank. The toad sage widened his eyes in surprise as gale force wind smashed into him hard, making him fly backward into the forest with a tremendous crash. Naruto panted a little. How's that? I bet that was more effort than he expected to put in for our first spar. I'd like to think he wasn't expecting that, but I'm not going to bet on that. He was about to retort, but it died when he heard a barely noticeable but distinctive sound of a clone popping in the forest. Shadow clone. Where is he? He exclaimed out loud as he frantically glanced around in a defensive posture. Impressive for an 11-year-old, and to help your confusion, I switched with the clone after that fire and wind jutsu. A deep voice spoke up behind him before he spun around to come face to face with his godfather. Jiraiya was staring at him as if making casual observations. Naruto began to feel nervous as he put his hands up in a defensive stance while his godfather smiled almost too gleefully for it to be anything good for him. I think I'll take it up a notch to show you how big of a gap it is between you and me in terms of strength and experience. Be ready, Gaki. Naruto gulped and he had cold sweat all over his entire body as he felt a tiny glimpse of the white-haired man's massive power radiating in waves. Good luck, Naruto. I remember seeing your father having harried and dead-looking expressions on his face whenever he had to train with this old pervert when he was younger. Looks like your godfather plans to make this into a family tradition. Kurama spoke up from inside the seal, feeling a little pity for her campaigner's luck. Naruto was ready to run when Jiraiya dashed forward with impossible speed and an evil smile plastered on his face. Several hours of torture, training later. Yo. Hatake Kakashi, a newly reinstated elite Junin of Konoha, walked into the clearing, lazily waving a hand as he kept reading a certain orange book in his other hand. Jiraiya turned to the masked and silver-haired ex-Anbu, now dressed as a regular Konoha Junin. Hello, Kakashi. Nice of you to finally join us. The Toad Sage greeted with an annoyed expression at his fellow shinobi's tardiness. Sorry, Jiraiya-sama. A squad of missing nin crossed my path and I had to neutralize them. Kakashi replied with his lone eye crinkling into an eye smile. Jiraiya cocked his head. That sounds like an actual legitimate excuse. That's because it was. The Junin retorted with a somewhat affronted tone, earning a hearty laugh. How are you enjoying changing posts from Anbu to a regular elite Junin? I haven't done anything yet. I asked Hokage-sama for some time off in between posts and he suggested this trip is some sort of vacation to train and unwind. I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to miss all these S-ranked missions I had to do. Don't I know it? There should be a limit on the time anyone spends with the Anbu since it takes a toll on anyone's humanity. So, where is Naruto? I was told he'd be here as well. Kakashi inquired, glancing around the clearing. Jiraiya smirked and pointed a finger in a certain direction. The Junin's gaze followed it. After a moment, he had to squint his lone eye. Where is he? All I see is that odd lumpy blue, black, yellow, and orange rock. Wait, is that him? He snapped back to Jiraiya, who laughed boisterously. I wanted to spar with him, and I might have gone a little overboard. A little. Kakashi echoed with a disbelieving eye. Don't look at me like that. He's one hell of a brat. Wouldn't stay down no matter how much shit I beat out of him. I had to knock him unconscious before he got injured any further. Jiraiya spoke with pride in his tone as he remembered how Naruto kept getting up in front of him no matter how overwhelming the odds were. I would think you'd be more careful with a 11-year-old, especially when he's the son of your favorite student. We both know he's no ordinary kid, and he'll be great in the future. It makes no sense to pull punches with him if he can take it and do everything it takes to dish it out. Jiraiya stated as he pointed at a large patch of scorched earth left by Naruto's collaboration jutsu. Kakashi was actually impressed by that. In any case, the Gaki should be up any minute. He'll have recovered enough thanks to the Kyuubi. Go ahead and introduce yourself to him while I hunt lunch for us. Jiraiya suggested as he walked off, waving over his shoulder. Kakashi shrugged and walked over to the lumpy and colorful rock, to watch in fascination as the blond boy had his black and blue bruises quickly disappear from sight. Just a moment later, a dazed Uzumaki Naruto sat up gingerly. Oh, feels like I fell down a ravine at least a few times. That arrow Sennin is just about as sadistic as the fox. He grumbled as he held a hand to his forehead. Hello. He jumped to his feet and turned around to see a tall and masked one-eyed shinobi looming over him. For a second he thought this guy was an enemy nin, but calmed down as soon as he saw the Konoha Hitai 8. Who are you? Are you the other guy Hokage Gigi sent? That'd be correct. My name's Hitaki Kakashi, and I'm tagging along for a little vacation. I'm also going to be helping Jiraiya-sama out with training you. I look forward to working with you. Likewise. Nice to finally see your face, even though most of it's still hidden, Inu. Naruto replied with a smile. He smiled wider when he saw Kakashi's eye widen a little at being called out by his former Anbu identity. He pointed at his nose for clarification. Great sense of smell, Kakashi-sensei. I remember your scent from when you helped me out sometimes few years ago. Thank you for that, by the way. You're welcome. No one deserves that kind of treatment, even more so when it's my sensei's son. Really. You were one of my dad's students. I hope you'll share some stories with me about him whenever you can. Naruto exclaimed with a big grin. Kakashi nodded with an eye smile. Now then, Jiraiya-sama is hunting for food, so let's get settled in and rested up. We'll resume when we finish eating. Kakashi advised as he turned around to walk toward the shack, his orange book already back up. Naruto flinched and paled. More beatdowns from Arrow Sennin. 1 month later, didn't I repeatedly tell you to come at me with the intent to kill? A lazy voice drawled out as a silver-haired Junin ducked under a wild swipe from an increasingly frustrated blonde boy. I know. I'm actually trying. As Kami is my witness, I really do want to slaughter you, you cocky asshole. Naruto growled as another one of his wild swipes missed again. Kakashi didn't even look like he moved from his original spot at all since the spar began. He was also lazily reading his orange book with an occasional perverse giggle as he effortlessly evaded Naruto's increasingly sloppy strikes. This served to piss the blonde off something fierce. Jiraiya was lounging at a patio table in the shade of a large tree nearby, watching the clearly lopsided spar with clear amusement on his face. The spar dragged on for a long while until Naruto finally had enough and allowed the rein on his rage to loosen. His eyes turning crimson and claws forming, he picked up speed in an instant and dashed forward to strike at a seemingly surprised Kakashi, intent on teaching this cocky bastard a lesson. He was sorely disappointed when his fist found nothing but empty air instead in the next second. Didn't we warn you we'd get more serious if you let that power out even a little bit? Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson. The same lazy voice intoned right behind his ear, making him quake in fear with wide eyes as his feral look disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. Just how is he so skilled? An Arrow Sennin is supposed to be even stronger. He felt an ominous aura begin to build up from behind. Here's my strongest attack. Konohagakure's Haijutsu. He wanted to run so badly, but his legs refused to obey him. Sennin Garashi, 1,000 years of death. Boom. Ah. Immediately afterward, a certain sage's uproarious laughter echoed throughout the forest surrounding the clearing. The next morning, I'm going to kill that little bastard. Jiraiya heard Kakashi mutter in monotone. He was washing his face with water from a creek near the training ground after he had woken up just a moment ago. While he was busy cleaning, he felt Kakashi join him at the water's edge a short while later and didn't bother looking up or greeting him for the moment. At least until he uttered that phrase. Huh. What did the Gaki do this time? He grumbled as he glanced over at his fellow shinobi to see what was wrong. And promptly fell over laughing so hard he thought his sides was really going to split at one point. Kakashi, staring down at the cackling sage with a dull expression, wasn't wearing his usual flak vest and long-sleeved shirt combo since he had just woken up. Instead, he only had on a pair of loose pants and a sleeveless spandex top that extended up his neck to cover his mouth and nose like a face mask. On the mask, directly over where his mouth was a horrid drawing of bright red fish lips that opened to show many missing teeth and an extremely large overbite. It looked utterly hilarious on the Junin, especially with that deadpan look in his lone eye. He apparently didn't notice this when he woke up until he saw his reflection in the creek's water just now. Haha. M must be BRR revenge F for T that technique YY you used yesterday. Jiraiya managed to choke out between laughs. I'm going to find him and teach him another lesson. Excuse me. Kakashi muttered in that same calm tone as he turned and walked off back toward the shack with continued laughter following him. It took the Toad Sage a long moment to calm down and let out a wheeze. He then smirked. It's not like him to miss such an obvious hiding spot, Gaki. Apparently he's still sleepy, and you got lucky because of that. In a murky part of the creek on the other side, a hollow bamboo sticking out of the water among many twitched violently. It then rose out of the water to reveal its other end was in the mouth of a totally soaked blonde boy. Apparently, it was being used as an improvised breathing apparatus while he was hiding underwater until just now. Why you're not gonna rat me out? Naruto sputtered through the water still in his mouth. Nah. Think of this as the lesson for today, which is survival. You'll be using everything you can think of to hide from, or at least fend off, Kakashi for the day. Be careful of his dog summons. Dogs. Yep, won't be long before he fully wakes up and remembers he has that particular contract. They have very few equals in tracking. Naruto gulped and immediately began wading up the creek to avoid leaving more of his scent on the dry ground. Not gonna help much, Gaki. The dogs can water walk. Shit, he cursed quietly and waded even faster out of sight, leaving behind a chuckling Toad Sage. Another month later, Rara. Naruto let out an earth-shattering roar as he felt himself losing control of himself to the Kyuubi's malevolent chakra. The roar was powerful enough to blow both of his sensei back some distance while they had to put their arms up to defend their faces from this incredible force. Naruto. Snap out of it. The experiments failed. You have to control yourself now. Kurama roared inside the boy's head. She was not expecting such a massive backlash from trying to contain her chakra within his body, hoping to improve the possibility of an actual beast transformation instead of a chakra shroud. Instead, when Naruto tried to direct the chakra inwardly, it increased in intensity and fought back violently. Due to the backlash, Naruto lost control of himself easily before he could stop this. Now, he was turning mindless with rage as his three-tailed chakra shroud began to glow an intense red, an indication that he was moving up to the powerful and far more uncontrollable four-tails stage. Damn. Something went wrong. Kakashi, you distract him while I apply this seal. Jiraiya commanded as he pulled out a piece of paper with an intricate chakra suppression seal on it. Kakashi didn't even bother to respond as he immediately moved in front of their enraged student to prepare diversion tactics. Later that evening Naruto awoke with a start. He then frantically glanced around to see it was nighttime and he was outside in the clearing when he finally saw Kakashi and Jiraiya sitting nearby next to a campfire, preparing some food. Both of them were staring intensely at the blonde for any indication that he really was Naruto. Naruto sighed with relief and stared down at the ground. I lost control, didn't I? Both men gave grim nods, and the blonde shivered as he felt nauseous. That was a horrible feeling and he never wanted to experience that again. Did either of you get hurt? No. We were ready for it and I immediately applied the seal to your forehead just before you went four tails. It's a good thing we did this with controlled conditions. In any case, I don't think we're going to try that again. According to what you said about the fox's theory on this, you should have shown some sign of a physical transformation long before it got out of hand and, with the transformation, you'd control the chakra more easily. Needless to say, that didn't happen. So I guess we'll call this a failure, and I strongly advise you to keep the Kyuubi's chakra amount to 3 tails for the time being until we find a workaround. Jiraiya explained soberly as he stirred the meat stew over the fire. Damn it. Naruto cursed as he slowly stood up to sit across from the men for his meal. He spent the dinner staring down at the ground as he absent-mindedly ate his food. The two men exchanged concerned looks but decided to leave him in peace for now. You know my body. What happened that I couldn't transform, Kurama? To be honest, I have no clue. Obviously there is a missing piece from all of this. I've seen other Jinchuriki transform using this same method, so it should have worked with us as well, even though I haven't tried this with Mito and your mother. I guess it's because you're too powerful. As much as I hate to admit this, but I'm not as strong as I was just before I was sealed into you. I'm still more powerful than the other Biju, but your father did something unusual with my sealing compared to others. He had the Shinigami seal half of my power into himself and the rest of me into you. Naruto seemed to have a light bulb go off in his head. Wait, maybe that was the cause. Dad did something with your chakra. Well, it did hurt like a bitch when he split me in two. I'll ask Ero Sennin. He should know more about that night. Oi, Ero Sennin. I was talking with the fox and we might have a theory on why this didn't work. Can I ask you something? Jiraiya looked up from his meal and nodded. Kakashi was reading his orange book, but Naruto knew he was listening too. The night when Dad sealed the fox into me, exactly what did he do? More specifically, what was special about the portion of the fox that he sealed into himself? Jiraiya widened his eyes and had on a thoughtful expression for a long moment. I think you might have stumbled onto the cause of this issue. According to the scroll on the seal he used, I did see that Minato specified that the Kyuubi's chakra be split in two in a certain way. One is yin with the other half being yang. It turned out that Minato took the yin essence within him. Naruto flinched when Kurama roared in frustration. The two men knew the boy was talking with the fox, so they kept silent. Damn it. That's why you couldn't transform. You've been using only my yang chakra, and you need yin too in order to properly transform because it'd balance out the other half. Without it, you'll be dealing with my chakra in its most potent form for the rest of your life. That means you'll be sensitive to the malevolence it tries to push on you, making it more difficult, if not impossible, to keep control the more tails you gain. Is there any other option? The only other possible way is to take control of my chakra and purify it, leaving it fully compatible with your chakra network. The only known way to do is to forcefully claim it is yours, and you're definitely not ready to fight me for that. I have to give my all in order for you to truly prove your right to my power, and that'll be a long while before you're sufficiently ready, if ever. I know your father meant well, but he really inconvenienced us with this. Naruto sighed as he took in all of this information and relayed everything to the two older men. They also sighed as well. Damn. You're plenty scary enough with 3 tails right now, but you would have been downright terrifying with 9 tails. Too bad we may not see that. Jiraiya murmured as he continued to think over this new information. Is there any way we could recover the yin chakra? Unfortunately, only way to do that is to somehow resurrect Minato in order for him to surrender the other half to us. Since he's stuck in the Shinigami's stomach, that's an impossibility. I guess we'll just find another workaround later on. Do you know of anything I could use, Ero Sennin? It won't be for a while, but I'll have you sign the Toad summoning contract. That will give you some powerful allies to fight with in battles. In addition to that, you can also train to use Senjutsu with nature chakra if you're deemed worthy enough by the elder Toads. I don't think we'll even worry about that not happening though. Senjutsu. What's that? It's a powerful technique in which you gather nature chakra into yourself to increase your body's strength, speed, durability, and chakra reserves. It's like a tailed beast transformation only without the malevolent chakra. I'm able to use it to a degree, and I call it Sage Mode. Wow. Could I do that now? Naruto excitedly asked before he was disappointed by a shake of Jiraiya's head. No. You could, but it would be inconvenient for everyone involved. You're still growing and that'll cause issues since you need to train your body to get used to calling upon a specific amount of nature chakra to balance with your own chakra, and the Kyuubi's as well. That means if you had trained to use it now, you'd have to train every other week to adjust and balance the correct amount of nature chakra as your coils and reserves continue to expand within your body as you age. If you mess up and call in the wrong amount, you'll die because it'd turn your body into stone. We're gonna have to wait on that until you have grown up sufficiently. Naruto gulped at the notion of possible death using this dangerous chakra and decided he'd wait until Jiraiya deemed him ready. Guess I'll just focus on finding other things to work on in the meantime. Day of departure for Konoha. It's been fun teaching you, Gaki. I got to know you and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm proud to be your godfather. You have many traits of both your parents, and I'm glad to see their ideals live on in you. Jiraiya said warmly as he adjusted the straps of his backpack. Naruto grinned before frowning as he realized something. You're not going to come back to Konoha with us, Ero Sennin. You'll go with Kakashi, Gaki. I have to go meet one of my contacts right away. Naruto glanced down with some disappointment. Jiraiya smiled assuredly as he clapped a hand on his godson's shoulder. Don't worry. I'll be back on your next break before you know it, and we'll work on more stuff. Now, remember your homework. Finish the books on sealing I gave you. You should be able to create your own storage seals and other basic stuff by the time I come back around. Also, here's a little extra credit. He mischievously said as he held a hand out. Naruto looked on with some confusion before his eyes widened in amazement as he watched a tightly compressed blue ball of chakra slowly form in the Toad Sage's hand. As soon as it appeared, it disappeared in a small whirlwind of dissipated chakra. What was that? I want to learn that. The blonde hopped up and down excitedly. Jiraiya chuckled. That's what I plan to teach you someday when I think you're ready. It's one of your father's jutsu called the Resengon. Wow. Why show me now if you're not going to teach me yet, though? You're a pretty smart kid, so I want to see if you can analyze the jutsu and be able to figure out how it works. It's difficult to master, but the 3 steps to achieve this are pretty easy to figure out and follow. So, I want to see if you can work out these steps yourself, and then I'd be happy to teach it to you next time we meet instead of later. I'll give it a try. That looks like a useful jutsu to have since it didn't seem to need seals. Imagine that with Raging Fox. Jiraiya felt a small shiver at the prospect of Naruto jumping and fainting around with that Resengon in his hand. That'd be a sight to behold, especially since he helped Naruto improve and augment his Raging Fox style with the shadow clones. In their recent spars, he and Kakashi had to stay on their toes a little against their student. He then ruffled a chagrined Naruto's hair with a grin, and called out his goodbyes as he walked off in a different direction. Kakashi and Naruto left shortly after that for Konoha. So, Kakashi-sensei, what's so great about that orange book that I've seen you reread millions of times this summer? I think I've also seen Hokage Gigi with that book too. The blonde curiously inquired about the bright orange book in the older man's hand after a few minutes of walking. I think I'll wait on telling you that. You're not of age yet and there's a list of people that would kill me if they find out I was the one who told you. Thank you for some blackmail material on Hokage-sama, however. Kakashi whispered out the last part as he flipped a page on his precious porn book. Naruto cocked his head in confusion. Think I'll have a look and see if any store has copies when I get back. Seeing the gears turning in the boy's head, Kakashi silently prayed to the heavens. Forgive me, Minato-sensei and Kushina-san. I think I may have inadvertently sparked your son's curiosity about these books. Kurama remained silent inside the seal as she felt Naruto's intention of finding out more about these books, and sighed tiredly. She wasn't sure if she wanted to warn her container about their contents. On one hand, it would be hilarious to see her container's reaction. On the other, it would confuse him like hell about females for a good while. Most importantly, if she warned him, it would raise questions on how she actually knew about what were in these books. She doubted Kushina wanted that dirty little secret to get out just yet. Back in Konoha, Hokage's office, and here we are. Kakashi finished reporting on his vacation with Naruto and Jiraiya, his face still buried in the orange book as he leaned against the wall next to the Hokage's desk. In a related matter, a certain purple-haired female Anbu guard hidden in the room was busy fuming at the elite Junin's blatant display of pervertness. Thank you for coming here, Kakashi-kun. It sounds like it was an interesting summer for all 3 of you, and I'm happy to hear Naruto-kun has gotten along well with Jiraiya-kun on this trip. I was worried there may have been some resentment from that boy. The third Hokage spoke softly with a smile. And did you think you've sufficiently rested up from your former position in the Anbu? Kakashi gave a lazy shrug. I'll admit working with Naruto over the summer improved my mood and let me settle a few issues I had when I was working as an Anbu. Now I think I'm ready to take on missions as a regular Junin. I might even take on a team sooner or later. The Hokage smiled. He could tell the boy changed Kakashi's attitude a little. You might not get a team for a while if you follow your sensei and decided to do the bell test. Kakashi shrugged again as if he didn't care. If they can't do it, then they don't deserve to be my students. Simple as that. Good luck with that. I'm curious as to where Naruto-kun is this time. Last time he came back from training, he played a prank on me. I think he was interested in something. It was distracting him on the way back. Kakashi nervously said as he felt a bead of sweat going down his cheek. He had an idea of what was bothering Naruto and he prayed to Kami that boy didn't follow up on his curiosity. He closed his book at that point and put it away. Really? What would that be? The third innocently asked. Kakashi shifted a little under his superior's curious gaze. I wouldn't know. He didn't tell me. It was technically true. He could tell what was on that boy's mind, though. Now I think I should excuse myself and let you get back to your business, Hokage-sama. Kakashi was in a hurry to leave because he was having an increasingly bad feeling. Before the Hokage could dismiss him, they were bowled over by a loud voice that rattled the entire village. As Kinato slowly pushed two of his long and slender fingers into Mushina's soaking and quivering flower petal, what the hell is this? Kakashi froze in place and went pale as the Hokage seemed confused for a minute before realization struck him. Wait a minute. I read that sounded suspiciously like a line from a smut book, and that was Naruto-kun's voice. Would you care to elaborate? The Hokage kindly asked, but his hard gaze promised pain if Kakashi didn't explain himself quickly. The Junin was also unnerved by a massive killing intent spiking from the female Anbu guard still hiding out of sight, and he could feel her reaching for her sword. I'm sorry but I wouldn't stop being curious about the book haven't warned him. He quickly got out in one breath as he bowed repeatedly at the hips. I see. How about this, Kakashi-kun? Your first mission upon your reinstatement as a Junin will be to go find that poor and very confused boy and clearly explain to him the facts of sexuality and reproduction. It's about time for that lesson in the academy soon anyway. As you have so graciously volunteered yourself without pay, I'll absolve you of any punishment. You'll have to take care of any issue my Anbu Neko-san over there seems to have with you on your own time, however. The Hokage spoke evenly as he rubbed one of his temples. Kakashi flinched and sweated comically at the killing intent spiking from the purple-haired Anbu, now out of hiding and brandishing her sword threateningly. The Junin quickly bowed for one last time and disappeared from the office followed by the female Anbu. You son of a bitch. How dare you and Jiraiya corrupt that innocent boy? The purple-haired Anbu's female voice shrieked with righteous feminine rage outside the office almost immediately after their departure and there were sounds of a skirmish. Innocent. Naruto. Try training with him for 3 months and dealing with his pranks. Kakashi's panicked yelling faded as he ran from the Hokage tower with an enraged Anbu hot on his heels. Hiruzen had to chuckle and it grew into happy laughing as he leaned back into his chair with one thought. That boy, he always seems to find ways to make our lives interesting. Later in the evening in one of the village's parks Naruto sat stock still on a park bench with a clearly uncomfortable-looking Kakashi who was sporting several superficial cuts from a sword for some reason. The silver-haired Junin had just finished explaining the facts of life in deep detail to the wide-eyed boy a moment ago and now he was waiting for any reaction from the blonde. They sat, unmoving, for what seemed like hours but only minutes in reality. Kakashi found a random rock on the ground very interesting in the meantime. So, this, the red-faced blonde suddenly blurted out as he weakly pointed down to his own nether region. Yes. Kakashi quickly interrupted as if to trying to head off further awkwardness. Goes into a girl's VV vagina, Naruto ignored Kakashi's attempt. That's right. Or her mouth, if she wants to do that. Or her BB butt. Kami has blessed you if she really wants that one. Kakashi sighed inwardly as he gave up on trying to stop this conversation and decided to just be honest and answer every question now rather than later. The quicker he got away from this, the better. But, as you have explained, the girl can have ABB baby only if she gets TT the SS semen in her VV vagina. Kakashi would have found Naruto's uncharacteristic stuttering and blushing amusing if they weren't talking about such a serious subject. A couple doesn't necessarily need to have sex only to have children. A healthy couple will have many kinds of sex as an adult expression of their appreciation for each other, and they'd find ways to play around other than regular intercourse. The reasons for having sex can be many and complicated, so that's why it's best for you to grow up a bit more and come of age either as a genin or a civilian at 16 before you can make such important decisions about that when you find girls you'd be attracted to. Girls. As in plural, it sounded to Kakashi like Naruto was expecting it to be very difficult, even impossible, to find even just one girl who'd find him attractive. He didn't understand where this boy got this surprisingly low confidence in himself from. He'd have to remedy that. Considering you have your father's good looks, I should warn you that when Minato-sensei was younger, he had the attention of many powerful and attractive kunoichi. It goes so bad that Kushina-san had to beat them off to claim your dad only to herself. I imagine you may run into a similar situation, especially since you're going to be a strong and well-known shinobi in the future. I can confirm this from my time in your mother. Kurama suddenly put in her 2 cents from inside the seal. But, what about? Naruto trailed off as he was basically speaking to Kakashi and Kurama at the same time. The fox in you. I'll admit that might discourage some women from considering you as a potential boyfriend material. However, do you really want to pay attention to these women in the first place if they're so easily influenced by something you cannot help? The scarecrow's right. I will never approve of these females and I will make it known if I think they're unworthy of my container. Naruto flashed back to when Hinata easily accepted his situation and when Temari rejected him. I see what you mean by that. Now I told you all of this only because you could not help your curiosity and read one of Jiraiya-sama's porn books. You will have a sex education sermon later this year in the academy, so there's really no harm in telling you a bit sooner. However, I'll admit that'll be a lot less detailed than what I told you today. I just want you to really understand that because you now know all of this, it should not mean you should actively look out for any girl willing to try something with you because you're definitely not ready for that yet. Just naturally let it happen if you and the girl are attracted to each other, and that situation probably won't even happen for at least several years at the earliest. In the meantime, just enjoy being a kid because that'll be over the moment you become a shinobi, okay? Kakashi lectured with a serious expression. The blonde was deep in thought for a moment before looking at the older man with squinted eyes and foxy grin. Thanks for taking the time to tell me, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi simply responded with his usual eye smile. Naruto's eyes then suddenly widened and his face became pale rapidly. Oh shit. The Junin looked over at the blonde in concern. Now I know what's up with the blood I've been smelling occasionally on women. Kakashi cringed at the thought for a moment before breaking into an uncharacteristically loud laugh. It's not funny. I just realized I publicly embarrassed 2 women a couple years ago when I didn't know any better. That was you. I heard a story around the Anbu headquarters about how a kid announced to everyone within earshot that Neko-san was having her period. They said they've never seen her so flustered. I'd have liked to see that. Kakashi got out between laughs. It's not like I wanted to do that. I never knew what that was all about. Now I understand why Hokage Gigi and the fox were so uncomfortable when I asked them what was up, and why Anko-san was so adamant about me not calling any woman out whenever I smelled blood. I'll have to apologize to Neko-san and Anko-san later on. Kakashi froze mid-laugh. Why you mean to tell me the other woman you embarrassed was Anko? Midarashi Anko. Yeah. What's wrong with her? Nothing, except you embarrassed one of the scariest women in the entire village. Neko-san isn't far down that list by the way and lived to tell anyone about it. Kakashi looked up and around the park with his one shifty eye as if he was expecting Anko to pop out of nowhere and separate their heads from their bodies for even discussing this. Really? Sure, she may overreact sometimes, but I don't think she's that bad. I have a feeling we come from similar backgrounds, though I don't know why. It's not like she's a Jinchuriki. Naruto murmured in thought. Kakashi looked at the blonde with an appraising eye. You have no idea how close you hit that nail on the head, kid. One doesn't have to be a Jinchuriki in this village to be hated by most of the populace. Perhaps seeing more of him will do you some good, Anko-san. Naruto-kun. Oni-chan. Two familiar voices reached the men from the other side of the park. Both glanced up to see Hinata and Hanabi walking into the park from the street toward them, happiness apparent on their faces. Obviously they heard their favorite blonde was back in town. They were smiling so brightly upon seeing him again after so long that it seemed to have lit up the darkening evening air. Naruto flashed a smile and waved at them. Hanabi managed to have grown a couple more inches, though she was still petite even for her age. Other than that, she was beginning to lose her childish features and it would be only a couple years before she began to bloom into a young woman. Naruto knew she'd be devastatingly beautiful as an adult. Hinata, on the other hand, was now more like a young woman than a girl as she seemed to have grown prettier with her formerly round face having lost much of its baby fat and her indigo hair growing longer past her shoulders. Her outfit was different, having become slightly less bulky with a new light blue overcoat that wasn't as baggy as her fur-lined pink overcoat. It was clear to even the usually oblivious blonde that she was an early bloomer on the cusp of womanhood now. Remembering what he just learned about women over the past couple hours, Naruto had to fight hard to push down an intense blush as he easily imagined the two cute Hyugas standing before him maturing into beautiful women in the future. Kakashi noticed a barely visible tinge of red on the blonde's cheeks, and didn't need his Sharingan to see the bright red cheeks on Hinata's face all the way across the small meadow as the girls stopped and stood at a distance in polite deference to the male's privacy unless invited. Naruto stood up as if ready to meet and greet them, but had to stretch out the soreness in his body from sitting onto the bench for so long. He took this moment to whisper. Oi, before they overhear, you said women secretly think a lot more about men than they'd admit when it comes to sex. They just hide it better than men can. What about Hyuga women? They seem to be raised a bit differently. Immediately, Kakashi thought back to several flings he had with Hyuga women when he was younger. The main similarity between these Hyugas was that they were all insatiable and kinky. Especially when he entertained two of them at the same time. Thank Kami he learned the Kage Bunshin Jutsu by then. Grinning secretly behind his face mask, he stood up as well and ruffled Naruto's hair, much to the blonde's chagrin. I wouldn't know. He lied smoothly. I guess that's for you to find out if you have a Hyuga woman after you in the future. Now go and be a kid. I'll leave you to it. He finished as he waved goodbye to everyone before disappearing in a shunshin with one final thought. Kami really has blessed you if you already have earned the Hyuga Hire's interest. There's going to be a lot of kinky stuff for you in the future. I'm so jealous. I'll have to ask Jiraiya-sama to keep an eye on you for potential research material. Next day in Yamanaka Flowers, Yamanaka Ino was bored. Normally, that was never a good thing for her friends if they were nearby. Fortunately for them, she was stuck behind the flower shop's sales counter, her parents having decided earlier this summer that she was old enough to mind the register now. Letting out an annoyed sigh, she rested her chin on the counter as she slouched forward, wishing for anything exciting to happen. It hadn't been a bad summer for her. She managed to find time to spend with her friends and had some fun. She even participated in several training sessions. Mostly because she honestly didn't want to risk disappointing her best friend, Naruto, whenever he got back and heard that she didn't train much more than the minimal effort. She still didn't do much, but she could honestly say she was a bit stronger than before the break. On the other hand, she found herself missing spending time with a certain someone this summer. Despite her rivalry with Sakura, she found herself missing that pink-haired girl with the giant forehead. Sometimes she wished they haven't broken off their friendship just because they liked the same boy. Speaking of the boy, Uchiha Sasuke was another summer failure. She hadn't found any sign of him this entire break, so apparently he locked himself in to do nothing but train. Thanks to that, she hadn't made any progress in getting to know him more. Sure, she might have accepted that there'd be a degree of difficulty in dealing with the antisocial Uchiha, but this was getting ridiculous. Was she, Sakura, or any other girl their age not worth a few seconds for him to even remotely grunt in their general direction? Yo, Ino-chan. Her brief moment of despondency was shattered by the cheerful and familiar voice accompanied by the chime of the flower shop's door opening. As if it was a switch, that voice changed her mood completely as she perked up and smiled brilliantly at one Uzumaki Naruto entering the store with a raised hand, displaying his wonderful foxy grin that always seemed to light up her day so easily lately. Naruto. She hopped on top of the sales counter and leapt high into the air in a graceful flip toward her fellow blonde. She might not have trained as much as her other friends, but she was proud to call herself naturally nimble and acrobatic. Naruto wasn't fazed by this maneuver as he laughed lightly and opened his arms to catch her bridal carry style. He then swung her around once from the momentum as they laughed. She quickly wrapped her arms around his neck. I missed you. Why do you have to go on these training trips? She exclaimed, tightening her arms in slight irritation as he let her down and encircled his arms around her waist. You know why. I need to get strong. He murmured, enjoying having Ino in his arms even though he knew it was just her friendly and touchy-feely nature. After a long moment of squeezing each other, Ino had to step back, not noticing the slight pang of emptiness from the lack of his arms around her. You were plenty strong even before this summer, you know. Why do you need more training? I've found out after training with my two sensei this summer that I still have a long way to go. One of them could easily destroy the whole village if he wanted to. Ino's eyes widened at hearing of such terrifying strength. But, he's loyal to Konohagakure, right? He wouldn't use that power against us then. He won't, she sighed in relief. But that doesn't mean he's the only one that powerful out there. There are many others, and some of them would love nothing more than to see this village burn. I know I have the potential to be strong, so it's my responsibility to train hard so I can protect this village and all of my friends in the future. Naruto spoke with an assured tone. Ino had to smile, and she knew at that moment he would be an amazing shinobi. So are you here to see me? She inquired shyly and couldn't help the elation rising within her that he was taking time to stop by. She knew he was busy training most of the time, yet he still wanted to see her once in a while anyway. It definitely made her feel appreciated. Yep. I heard from Hinata-chan you've been roped into working in the shop over the summer. I thought it'd be cool if I stopped by and see you at work, maybe even help you out some if you'd like. That sincere offer made Ino blush. He wanted to just spend time with her for no reason other than to keep her company. She had to shake it off and assumed it was just him being friends with her like usual. Fighting down the blush that refused to go away, she nodded with a smile. Sure. It's been slow lately, and you've gotta tell me all about your summer, she exclaimed as she tugged on Naruto's arm to pull him into the store so they could get settled in. She never noticed that she hadn't thought once about a certain Uchiha until the first day of the new academy term began a week later. Academy classroom around the beginning of third year. An outside observer would have noticed that this classroom was as silent as a crypt, which would have made sense if it was empty, but since it was full of at least over 30 usually loud 12-year-old teens, this was unnatural. Another thing the observer would have noticed was that the students in the classroom were split into two distinctive groups, females on one side and males on the other. They were all staring straight ahead with bright red blushes, refusing to make eye contact with anything, especially with one of the opposite sex. And so, that's how a new life is created. Any question? An elderly-looking woman finished in a dull tone. Behind her, on the blackboard, were images and diagrams of both female and male sexual organs labeled with many terms that made the young and innocent students all uncomfortable to learn. Right then, let's move on to sexually transmitted diseases. The woman continued in her bland tone when no one spoke after a long and painful minute of silence. Up the rows of desks on the left side, 3 young and cute girls were huddled together with bright red blush visible on their cheeks. We have to do that with men if we want babies. Sakura stuttered nervously as she did her best not to glance over at Sasuke, whose cheeks were pink and glancing pointedly away through the window next to his desk. For some reason, the thought of doing that with the Uchiha made her feel unsure, instead of excited. I know. I'm definitely never going to be ready for that. Ino hissed, too embarrassed to look at either Sasuke or her male friends, especially Naruto. Just the thought of doing it with him made her imagination heat up, and it was too confusing to understand what that meant. Anyo, I already knew all this beforehand, but it's still embarrassing to hear this subject be so casually talked about like today. Hinata murmured as she poked her index fingers together nervously with red cheeks. She wouldn't stop glancing over at Naruto, who was also busy glancing everywhere but his female friends. Why do you know already? Ino quizzed. I already began it, not too long ago. Tomo-chan took it upon herself to teach me all about what we covered today. Hinata replied in a whisper, her blush intensifying. Though, she neglected to mention that her information was much more detailed than this. Sakura and Ino had to suppress a small pang of jealousy for their fellow female being able to mature just a bit quicker than them. Oh, no wonder why you couldn't be in the same room as Naruto without blushing for a couple weeks at that time. The blonde exclaimed quietly. It was no secret for all girls in the class that Hinata liked Naruto something fierce. The indigo-haired Hyuga let out a squeak of, "Eep," before seemingly shrinking into her large coat. On the other side of the room, 5 boys were huddled together. This is troublesome. How the hell was I even born? I can't imagine my dad having the energy and motivation to do that with mom. Shikamaru muttered as if contemplating one of life's great mysteries, which, to him, might literally very well be. Choji, for once, wasn't munching on his bag of chips, too disturbed by the lecture to have an appetite, or even speak. It is logical. Why? Because they must do it in order to continue their legacy. Aburame Shino, the heir of the bug-using clan, spoke in a composed tone even with a hint of pink on his cheeks. Doesn't change the fact that our parents did it to have us, and that we're going to have to do it ourselves in the future if we're gonna have kids as well. Inazuka Kiba, heir of the dog-using clan, spoke up in a disgusted tone. He wasn't quite ready to move on from being worried about the cooties just yet. He glanced over at the last male in the group. Oi, you don't seem so bothered by this. He pointed out Naruto's somewhat bored expression while listening to the lecture and his friend's discussion. The blonde shrugged. That's because I've heard all this before, though in much more details than this one. This granny only covered the basics. He admitted, though he still couldn't fight down the blush on his cheeks as he tried not to glance over at his female friends. More specifically Ino and Hinata. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed in interest. What aren't part of the basics? Naruto blushed and glanced away. I'm not sure if I should tell you. Come on. If it's something we should know. Kiba insisted, not taking a no for an answer. The blonde let out a resigned sigh and beckoned the others to huddle together tighter for him to whisper. On the other side, the 3 young women were now intrigued by their male friends huddling together as if trading secrets. Wonder what they're saying? Ino inquired curiously, and Hinata blushed. She could read lips even from across the room and she caught the gist of the male's conversation a moment ago. She had a feeling she knew exactly what Naruto was going to explain. Anyo, I think it's to expand on what we've learned in this lecture. Sakura snapped to her sharply with wide eyes. Why you mean there's more to this? Ino had a gleam in her eyes at the potential juicy information this would provide. Like what? Can you tell us? She insisted. Hinata blushed brilliantly as she remembered a particular tidbit Tomo told her. She tried to get out only to be interrupted. What? They do it in the ass too. Kiba screamed from across the room, shocking all the students into either fainting or blushing so hard it looked like their heads would pop. Naruto was busy frantically trying to shush Kiba even though it was already too late, while his other male friends were stunned into absolute immobility. Something like that. Hinata finished needlessly, watching Ino and Sakura's faces glow bright red as the images went through their minds, before they fainted. Some time later during the first term of the 3rd academy year, so what happened here, Naruto-kun? The Hokage spoke evenly as he rubbed his eyes with his thumb and index finger. He was standing in full Hokage outfit in front of an obviously embarrassed and distraught Naruto with Kakashi standing next to him. The silver-haired Junin was quietly surveying the chaotic scene still going on behind the blonde with an amused smirk hidden behind his face mask. They were standing outside next to a badly damaged section of the Shinobi Academy. Distraught and frazzled students were everywhere. Chunin, Junin, and Anbu were running around doing damage control. Well, you see, I should have realized it was a drill. Now that I think about it, there'd be no way enemy Nin could have gotten this far into Konoha to invade the academy without us at least being warned in advance. Naruto shifted his eyes everywhere without meeting Kakashi's and Hiruzen's gazes as he spoke. Go on. What did you do when you realized it was an invasion? The 3rd encouraged gently and Naruto let out a sigh. I immediately got the drop on the guy that entered our room threatening to kill someone. He didn't even see it coming. As if on a cue, a Chunin dressed in a basic enemy ninja outfit was carried by the trio on a stretcher, moaning in pain about a broken arm and ankle. Then, after making sure that guy was disabled, I immediately attacked another one about to enter another room nearby in the hallway. Another stretcher went by, a veteran genin on it minding his ribs gingerly while cursing a certain blonde kid loudly. Finally, I pounced on the third guy who was coming out of another room with a hostage in his arm. A stretcher passed by once again. This time with a Chunin showing signs of a severe concussion. After that, I immediately came face to face with three guys with kunai in their hands. Before I even realized it, I was going through hand seals for my Daitapa jutsu. That's how this wall behind me blew out. Naruto finished quietly while pointing a thumb over his shoulder at the scene as people searched through the rubble for the three poor nin caught in his technique. While you technically did everything right as if this was an actual invasion, I have to admit your reaction was a bit extreme for an academy student. Is there a reason for that? Ero Sennin and Kakashi Sensei drilled into my head that no reaction to a sudden and unfavorable situation is too big. Better to be safe than sorry if I performed an underwhelming counterattack. I'm really sorry about this, Hokage-sama. I'll be more careful next time and try to think before acting. Naruto guiltily said as he bowed his head. Hiruzen glanced at Kakashi, who shifted at being pointed out as being half responsible for the young blonde's mindset. Thank you. There won't be any punishment from this. It's my fault I approved this drill without sufficient preparation beforehand. You may go join your classmates until you're dismissed. The third commanded gently. Naruto bowed again and walked off toward a group of frazzled students. Their hair was a mess from him using the Daitapa jutsu indoors, especially Hinata's, and they had stunned looks from hearing that their 12-year-old classmate decimated 6 active shinobi in minutes. Kakashi and the Hokage watched and smiled as Naruto's friends jumped on him with loud questions. They were a little concerned when they noticed Uchiha Sasuke was standing some distance away from the group, glaring jealously at Naruto. So, Kakashi drawled out. Don't say it or you'll regret it. The Hokage ordered firmly. It's got to be said, Hokage-sama. I knew this would happen the moment you brought this proposal up at the last Junin meeting. How was I supposed to know he would react like that? It was supposed to raise the students' awareness that not everything is safe and sound where it should be, like here at the academy. I'd say it worked. You just need to account for the Naruto factor. Thankfully the students did not see everything clearly in the chaos, so all most of them knew was that he simply used a jutsu an academy student shouldn't know, and they still do not know the full extent of his abilities. Hopefully this'll blow over. Oh, I made a pun. Kakashi lazily exclaimed with a chuckle at the Hokage's eye roll. Though I'm concerned about that Uchiha's behavior toward Naruto as of late, and I think it'll intensify again after today. Not much we can do that about while they're still civilians. We'll let the boys work it out if they have to. Since you've so clearly disobeyed my orders on calling me out on my admittedly poor decision and you were responsible for training Naruto to react like that, I assume you will repent for this by picking up the bill for the damages. The third said almost good-humoredly. Kakashi's one eye widened for a moment before he shrugged. Bah. Still worth it, and I'm filthy rich from all the S-rank missions I took as an Anbu. It's a small price to pay for telling my powerful and wise leader, I told you so. 2 weeks before Naruto's departure for his third training trip, it was a quiet moonlit night in Konoha as the village began its usual nightlife activities. A certain purple-haired 18-year-old female Chunin was already ahead most of the night crowd with her 5th cup of warm sake as she sat at the worn counter in a somewhat shady bar located in the seedier part of the village. Already beginning to feel the buzz, she stared at the small crowd in the bar and scowled slightly as she watched groups of friends chatting and laughing together. She let out a barely noticeable but dejected sigh. Mitarashi Anko had a terrible year. If she thought her life would improve with time when people hopefully found newer things to worry about rather than focus on Orochimaru's betrayal 5 years ago, she was dead wrong. Just as many people still remember the traitor now as they did the day he left the village, and she was the unfortunate scapegoat. She constantly had people curse her, spit in her face, and tried to sabotage and undermine her efforts on any job she did. Plus, they thought she should be a whore and on her knees to please every man in the village right this minute. She was glad to be done with the Chunin patrols earlier in the year. While she didn't have to worry about being stuck with the same people on a team for long periods of time like she had to when she was a genin, she was reminded that many more people had little faith in her and automatically disliked her as soon as her name was heard. Her spirit was somewhat uplifted when she began working in torture and intelligence department. She considered her boss and trainer, Morino Ibiki, to be a close acquaintance now. It was ironic that she was actually treated like a regular person by the one man who would have had every legitimate reason to suspect her of any traitorous behavior since that was his job. Enko scoffed at that thought. Her social isolation was so bad she actually had to be suspicious that someone other than her surrogate older sister, Yugao, and best friend, Kurenai, treated her decently. She briefly remembered the blonde kid she last saw a year ago and smiled at how nice he was to her, even when she played at trying to kill him for accidentally ruining her dango. Her smile dropped a little as she reminded herself that he did not know about her past and that was why he was still nice to her. Imagining that Blonde's mistrusting face actually hurt her more than she expected since meeting him always seemed to brighten her mood each time. She hoped that if there was still a next time she met him, he would still be ignorant about her past so she could see the bright smile and sparkling blue eyes again. Ordering another drink, she noticed a group of 3 unsavory male chunin sitting in a corner booth nearby. She had to suppress her disgusted shivering as she practically felt their eyes roaming over every single inch of her body. She saw one of the men leer at her as if he was planning to make her his tonight. Once again, she cursed her good looks. If she was going to be a scapegoat for that snake bastard's betrayal, she should have at least been ugly and inconspicuous so she could slip under the radar more easily. Hey snake bitch, how much to give me and my friends a good time? The same man who gave her the leer earlier suddenly appeared at her side, his sick smile plastered across his face. Enko cursed loudly at her lost piece before she gave him a cold glare. If that's the best pickup line you can come up with, I feel sorry for you. Also, kindly fuck off and die. You're ruining the taste of this sake with your stink. She growled as she took out several of her senbon to make her point. Whoa, I don't know why you would be so sensitive. I didn't think whores had feelings. The man leered again before laughing uproariously as if he just told a hilarious joke. Having no patience, Enko twirled in her seat to press the points of her senbon to the suddenly frowning man's neck. Listen here, you worthless worm. Even if I was desperate enough to fuck around as so many of you seem to believe, I can and will find much better than you or any of your friends. Even if you're standing all the way over in Kumo, I'd still want you even farther away before I begin feeling clean again. Now leave me alone and let me drink in peace before I actually push these senbon through your neck and leave you permanently paralyzed, and, believe me when I say this, I have absolutely no problem with doing that. Enko spoke evenly in a quiet voice so as not to attract unneeded attention, her glare promising she'd go through with her threat. The man, now angry, silently backed off and gave her one more glare before slowly moving back to his friends. Enko sighed and turned back to her sake. Her mood, which had been briefly brightened by remembering that blonde's smile and eyes, took a turn for the worst again. Phew. She sure put you down hard. One of the other chunin cracked up when the man returned from being shot down by Enko. I don't know why that bitch keeps her legs closed together so tightly. You'd think after being with that snake bastard, she'd be easy, but no, she had to pretend to be a decent woman and make it hard on us men. Why does that snake bastard only get to have that nice and curvy body while she's denying the rest of us? The first chunin grumbled. In any case, I think we're going to help her loosen up tonight, especially her legs. I spoke with the bartender and paid him quite a fee to put something in her sake. He said it'll take effect in about an hour. We'll just bide our time until then. The third chunin interjected. The first chunin smirked with sick anticipation, but the second chunin wasn't as receptive of the plan. Wait, that's illegal. What if the bartender turns us in for trying to bribe him? Don't worry, he's a friend of mine and he hates that bitch as much we do. We're finally going to get a piece of that amazing body and no one's going to care about her afterward. There'll be no backlash for us. What have you got to lose? The third spoke in a serious tone, indicating he won't take no for an answer. They were all in this together now and there would be no backing out. The second chunin knew this and relented with a nod. The other 2 men grinned as they turned to watch Enko drink another cup of sake. The bartender gave the men a barely discernible hand sign before walking off. About an hour later on the other side of Konoha at Ichiraku ramen stand, that's the stuff. Naruto declared as he polished off his 10th bowl of ramen. Even though your sensei's being a meanie restricting your ramen intake, you're certainly making up for it on your 2 trips here per week. Ayame teased with a giggle as she leaned on the counter across from the blonde sitting on his usual stool. Yep, my sensei's such a meanie. Keep on telling me how much of a meanie she is being right now, Ayame-chan. Naruto encouraged with a knowing grin. You do remember I'm right here in your head, don't you? I heard everything. Kurama spoke up with an annoyed tone. Really? No way. I totally forgot about that, he replied in monotone, barely keeping from laughing out loud. I think you just earned yourself a bijudama up your ass tonight when you come into our mindscape. The fox sounded serious about it too. Naruto just inwardly shrugged. As long as he didn't die from it, he'd take anything his tenant dished out. Damn it. I remember I could scare you shitless with just my presence alone. Where have the days gone? Naruto ignored the fox's grumbling and paid for his meal, then said his goodbye to Ayame, who was now closing up. He slowly made his way back, enjoying the moon and the silence on these empty streets. It wasn't long before he suddenly stopped cold in his tracks. He felt a strange presence in the air, and he could feel his body wanting to go find the source of this odd presence. As if it was tugging at him. Kurama, something's wrong. I can feel something in the air. I can't explain what it is, but it's familiar to me. He winced upon hearing a roar of excitement from the giant fox in his head, and then felt her pace back and forth on all fours, her long tails thrashing around excitedly. That's my chakra, and, what's more, it has the yin essence since I can feel my own chakra's physical properties. I have no idea how my chakra from before I was sealed into you is still around, but we're not going to pass this up. You must get it now, because I can feel something tainting it and we need to collect it before this gets worse. Naruto hopped up to the rooftops and immediately began sprinting in the direction of whatever he was feeling. I hate to rain down on your excitement, but even I can tell there isn't much of your chakra wherever it is. It might not do anything. It's still worth a try. Just remember my chakra is very potent, even in small quantities. Just get there and we'll figure out how we can obtain it. Back with Anko a few minutes earlier. How could I be so stupid? I got too cocky and I'm now paying for it. Anko berated herself as she held on to a brick wall bordering the street she was walking on between the bar and her apartment. She knew the men were trying to drug her and even prepared her body for immunity to whatever they may have slipped to her. Why throw away some perfectly good sake? It wasn't the first time unsavory men tried this on her. She always enjoyed seeing their looks of confusion and rage when their plans didn't work. What she didn't expect was for this drug to be even more potent than the average run-of-the-mill rape drug. While she would recover from this soon thanks to her higher immunity than an average human, it still left her weak for now, and that was all these men needed. Panting, she turned and glared hatefully at the 3 men hovering around her like wolves waiting for their prey to show a moment of weakness. To make the matter worse, her curse mark was flaring up, nearly paralyzing her body with blinding pain. If it was just the drug, she'd be able to fight the men off easily enough, but combined with the curse seal acting up, she was more helpless than a newborn baby. Why did the curse mark have to act up for the first time in years, and tonight of all time? What's wrong, snake bitch? Need our help getting you home? Or maybe you'd like to come with us to one of our places instead, the first Chunin spoke with a disgusting leer. The other 2 Chunin stayed back, out of the kunoichi's range. Anko growled and took out her senbon to throw a few handfuls at the men. They were aimed badly and thrown with little power, so the 3 Chunin had no trouble dodging them before moving in closer to surround her. Just calm down and enjoy yourself. It'll be over quickly and you can get back to your life. I don't see why you have to make it difficult for us to enjoy what we deserve. You might even find this a turn on. The first Chunin spoke as if he knew what Anko needed. Before she could try to throw one more handful of senbon, the man's face flashed with rage before dashing in to bury a fist deep in her stomach. She grunted in pain and collapsed to all fours, vomiting whatever was left in her stomach with the pain from her curse mark intensifying. Stop trying to make things difficult for us. You were that snake bastard's bitch, so you're lower than trash. You don't even deserve to lick the high heels of the Red District's whores. You should be happy we're actually giving you this much attention. Enko laughed spitefully through the pain. She knew she couldn't fight them off anymore. She decided on the next best thing. Get them enraged so they'd accidentally knock her out. Fuck you. Do whatever you want. Just know Orochimaru ruined the rest of men for me. You will never ever hear me moan out anything, especially with your tiny dicks that not even your red district whores will give a single lick for all the money you have on you. Enko lied through her teeth. She hated having to use her traitorous sensei's name in such a way, but it seemed to be what pissed them off the most. She hoped to Kami she'd be unconscious long enough to last through being forced to give up her first time to such disgusting men. The insult almost worked as it enraged the third Chunin into kicking her hard in the stomach. The pain was nearly enough to knock her out, but she needed a couple more. Unfortunately for her, the first Chunin caught on to what she was trying and held his comrade back. Smirking, the first Chunin bent down to his knees and grabbed Enko's chin forcefully to make her look level with his eyes. Her eyes were burning with hate and murder. I see what you were trying to do. Unfortunately for you, I want to make sure you remember everything. I still don't see why you're still fighting so hard. It's not like this is your first time. Enko cursed herself because she flinched a tiny bit at that statement. The Chunin caught this and went wide-eyed. Wait, you mean to tell me you've never fucked anyone before? Oh, that's rich. We got lucky tonight, guys. This is a bona fide virgin, the man announced to the men, who showed their appreciation for the luck by grinning wider. I guess we'll have to be the ones with the honor of ruining the rest of the men for you then. Maybe if you're lucky and pay us next time, we'll actually do it again. But tonight's going to be free for you, the leader said gleefully as he nodded at the men to help him pick her up and carry her into a secluded alleyway nearby. She couldn't even try to bite anyone as the pain from her curse mark increased enough to immobilize her completely. The only thing she could hope for is that the pain continued to pick up and it'd kill her from shock before they began anything. She could feel them already beginning to grope at her and she shivered in disgust. She swore again to herself that she would never forgive that snake bastard for betraying everyone and leaving her to take his place. She made many plans on how to kill the men doing this to her afterward, and then she'd hunt that man down or die trying. They dropped her unceremoniously up against a wall far enough into the alley that no one from the street could see them, and they unzipped her Chunin flak jacket and peeled it off. One man slowly cut her tight t-shirt open with a kunai, exposing her purple-laced bra barely holding her large breasts in. The men grinned with sick pleasure as they began to reach for the fleshy mounds. Enko could do nothing but allow tears to form at the corners of her closed eyes. Why did this have to happen to her? She didn't deserve any of this. As she began trying to tune out everything in hope of suppressing this horrible experience when the disgusting hands were mere inches from her, her eyes jolted wide open when she heard something unexpected. Oi! What the hell do you think you're doing to one of my friends, you bastards? A young male voice called out from the street, which stopped the men cold in their track. They raised their heads as one and looked at the alley's entrance to see a lone blonde-haired boy glaring at them with icy blue eyes. Their shocked faces twisted into anger at being interrupted. Enko knew something was going on, but the pain from her curse mark was making it hard for her to concentrate on the new person's voice, and she couldn't see who this was from where she was sitting. The pain got to be too much, so she allowed herself to fall into unconsciousness, hoping to Kami the new voice was friendly. Beat it, demon brat. Or giving this one a good time since she was practically begging for it. One of the Chunin sneered at the blonde. Really? Doesn't look that way to me. It looks to me like you're about to rape her because that's the only way you're going to get any action. I mean, look at your faces. Not even your mothers would love them. The men became enraged. If there was one thing they hated more than snake bitches, it was this demon brat. They would not allow his insults to go unheeded as they all ran as one down the alley at the lone boy, intending to take him out for good. This seemed like a good idea at that time. Now I have 3 angry Chunin bearing down on me. 3 angry and drunk Chunin. You can do this. Just make them pay for making that woman suffer. If I have to pick one thing I hate about humanity, it's the rapists. And you humans call us monsters. Yeah, and I'm sorry on behalf of decent humans everywhere. I'll break these bastards down. Naruto swore as he began avoiding their flurry of clumsy punches and kicks when the Chunin reached the boy. He was going to use their drunkenness and rage against them. He continued to dodge easily while waiting for an opportunity, and he saw it when one of them almost overextended himself on a badly aimed punch, but it was all Naruto needed. The blonde easily grabbed the wrist in a vice-like grip and twisted it upward to lock it up at the elbow, making the man cry out in discomfort. Still holding onto the arm, Naruto stepped in to deliver a vicious upward palm strike directly to the elbow, shattering it and tearing up the tendons, making the arm bend unnaturally upward. The man, reeling from the pain and shock of seeing his own arm bend in the opposite direction of it where it was supposed to go, did not even notice Naruto doing a hard foot stomp on one of his knees, shattering it. This made the man fall down to his only good knee, still in daze. The man finally felt all the pain from his broken elbow and knee rushing through him, shaking him out of his shocked haze. He was about to scream shrilly in unbearable agony when Naruto decided to give him sweet unconsciousness by slamming his head sideways into the nearby alley brick wall with a hard shove. Naruto smoothly stepped over the unconscious man's body to engage the last two men standing still in shock at the brutality a 12-year-old boy inflicted on their friend. One of them snapped out of it and he saw the blonde glaring up at him, his icy blue eyes alight with vengeance in the moonlight. Instinctively, the second man took out a kunai and tried to slash at the boy wildly. The boy easily sidestepped the swipe, the blade sparkling as it hit the alley wall next to them. Naruto took this chance by whirling into a roundhouse kick that crushed the man's wrist against the wall, shattering it into a million pieces and making him drop the kunai. The boy deftly grabbed the kunai out of the air and whirled around again to smash its knobbed end into the man's ribs, knocking the air out of him before he could scream in pain and forcing him to his knees, clutching at his broken ribs with his one good arm. Dropping the kunai, the blonde grabbed the man's head by the hair and pulled him into a punishing knee blow to the nose. As blood exploded from the man's broken nose, Naruto forced the dazed man's head up to level a menacing glare with him. After this, it'll take a lot of work just to be able to throw any weapon straight with that hand of yours. Just remember you brought this on yourself. The boy's tone was as terrifying as his glare. The man's eyes widened when his opponent quickly slammed both hands hard on his temples as if using a pair of cymbals. The second Chunin was already unconscious before he even started to fall limply to the ground at Naruto's feet. The blonde glanced over at the final Chunin with a scowl. "You're the leader, aren't you? I bet you're the one who started this." Naruto spoke evenly as he trained his cold eyes on the lone man, who jolted out of his shock and snarled angrily. "You. Of course a demon spawn would protect someone like that snake bitch." The boy narrowed his eyes. "She's my friend. Of course I'd protect her, and she hasn't done anything wrong." The man burst out with a crazed laugh. "You didn't know, huh? This woman worked for Orochimaru before he betrayed the village and this whore left with him. Only for her to come back 3 years later like it was nothing. And she had the gall to go ahead and become a nin for the same village she betrayed. I don't know what they were thinking allowing her near this village's secrets, as it's obvious she'd pass them down to her master eventually. She deserves everything we're going to do to her." Naruto was stunned. He always knew there was something familiar between him and Anko. But for their situations to be so similar, like being hated by the village for something they had no control over, being mistrusted constantly, having to work to earn each and every person's respect, and many other things. He shook his head to glare at the man with determined eyes. "You're a fucking moron then. If that was true, the Hokage would never have allowed her into the shinobi force. There's a reason he's the Hokage and you're just a pathetic lowly 30-something Chunin clinging to his petty hatred. How dare you, you fucking demon! Exclamation mark. I'll make sure they have your head for this. They'll never believe a demon's words against mine. First of all, I'm not the Kyuubi. Get that right, moron. By the way, the fox inside me thinks you're worse than trash. That you don't even deserve to be a one-celled slime. How do you like hearing that from a real demon?" Naruto shot back with a sadistic grin. The man growled as if he was offended at being considered worse than even the Kyuubi itself. "Second of all, they won't have to believe my words. The Anbu up there will take care of that for me." The blonde pointed a thumb upward, directing the man's gaze up to see a boar-masked Anbu sticking to one of the alley's walls with chakra, watching the scene impassively. You're going to help this demon against me." The Anbu continued to remain silent as if he wasn't being addressed. "It's useless. He saw everything since I've arrived. Benefit of having a detail on me for my safety, Though I'm sure he'd think I don't need to have guards on me anymore after tonight when I've kicked 3 Chunin's asses. He knows you 3 were the ones in the wrong. I imagine he'd only jump in if I actually tried to kill any of you. Frankly, I think death is too good for you 3. I really despise people who hurt my friends, especially if it was attempted rape, so I'll have you all survive this so you'd have your assholes reamed by large burly men in prison. I hear they don't like rapists. The man roared wordlessly, instead opting to take a kunai out and go for the kill against the blonde demon with his eyes full of hatred and rage. Naruto sighed at this being too easy before creating a shadow clone. The man apparently didn't notice this when one ducked under his swipe, allowing the other blonde to counter with a painful punch to the stomach. This didn't deter the enraged man much as he dashed back in for another swipe, only to be countered effortlessly once again when one Naruto made him miss while the other countered with a kick to his neck. This went on for a long half-minute with the 2 Narutos effortlessly playing the Chunin like a fiddle. The man continued to get more bruised and battered the longer he tried until he couldn't keep up his reckless charge, and it was at that point both Narutos went on the offensive. One Naruto would focus on attacking the man's torso and groin while the other would occasionally leap to one of this narrow alley's walls and strike his upper body on the rebound to keep him off balance. Finally, the man became dazed and about to collapse, and this allowed the 2 Narutos to hop back and they both leapt to a wall each and rebounded to deliver 2 full-force flying kick. One aimed at his face with the other going for the stomach. This powerful combined attack finally knocked the last Chunin off his feet when he was sent flying back down the alley, passing over Anko's unconscious body on the way. He crashed into the dead-end wall hard enough to break bones. Everything in the alley fell silent finally as both Narutos landed from their final attack. After a brief exchange of nods, one of them dispelled, leaving behind the original. He then began walking to the dead end, making sure Anko was alright and breathing evenly as he passed her. Groaning in pain and shock as the Chunin slowly tried to force himself up into a sitting position even with many broken bones, he felt the boy step up to him and stand still at his splayed feet. Deciding he'd at least give the demon a defiant glare, he looked up only to nearly piss his pants in fright. Standing over the man, Naruto was casting a pitch-black silhouette with the bright moon behind him. His spiky hair made him look like he had a pair of demon's horns, but what terrified the man the most was the boy's eyes. They weren't blue like before. Instead, they were glowing sinister crimson. They glowed with such intensity that they promised the man would see hell in them if he stared too long. Despite his broken bones, the man was shaking violently before this demon's overbearing presence. Without warning, the blonde forcefully wrapped a hand around the man's mouth and gripped his cheeks to pull him in closer, making the man's body scream in pain at being moved roughly. Know this, you fucking scum. If you manage to get out of prison despite every man there trying their best to have you playing for the other team, I will know every thought you have. If you ever think of going after any helpless woman, or even leer at one by accident, I will find you and I will make you regret it. The boy snarled as he leaned in closer to get nose to nose, his glowing crimson eyes growing even more menacing. At this point, the terrified man pissed his pants and fell unconscious. The blonde let go of him and he slumped over to the side. Inwardly, Naruto was laughing. You're right, Kurama. Channeling you chakra into my eyes not only improved my night vision, it made them glow red. I'm surprised I didn't notice this before. Well, now you know. Imagine using this against enemy shinobi in darkness like just now. Just the psychological impact alone will help you win battles easily. Anyway, I wish you made these worms suffer more, but hearing their bones breaking, especially the tendons tearing in that man's elbow, was music to my ears. You humans are pathetically fragile but you make good sounds. Kurama punctuated this with a sinister grin. Glad to be of service, though I should tell you that your evilness is leaking out a little. Oh whoopsie. I just don't know how to control that sometimes. The fox deadpanned. Naruto heard the soft sound of a pair of feet landing on the alley's ground behind him. He turned around to face the Anbu that was watching over the scene. Am I in trouble, Bor-san? Bor shrugged his shoulders. These men deserve worse and they'll get it from Morino-san. Even if she was new to his department, no one messes with his subordinates and gets away with it. I'll have to report this to Hokage-sama, however. That's fine. I'll gladly take any punishment if there's going to be one. It's a small price to pay for this. I have to say I'm surprised a young boy like you even knew what these bastards were about to do, let alone what men in prisons do to each other. Naruto shrugged. In case you hadn't noticed, my life so far wasn't exactly filled with childhood innocence and naivety. It also helped when a perverted silver-haired Junin explained every single thing in every single detail, and suddenly, all the double entendres and vague conversations I've heard in passing about anything relating to more adult subjects made sense. The young boy's numb nonchalance at his previous treatment and mature knowledge made even the hardened Anbu grimace, but recovered quickly. He nodded before turning toward the unconscious woman as he picked up her discarded Chunin flak vest and carefully put it back on and zipped it up so it would cover her exposed bra-clad chest. Naruto had to look away with a slight blush as this went on. She looks unharmed though she'd complain about losing her shirt and the bruise on her stomach tomorrow. I have to go get my squad to pick up the trash. Would it be alright if I ask you to take her home tonight? She's in no condition to answer any question and she just needs a good night's sleep, so it makes no sense to have her remain here when we could just come by for her report tomorrow. She doesn't live too far from here. Naruto nodded his consent and picked up her surprisingly light body to drape over his back. Because of his shorter stature, her feet were dragging lightly against the ground. He was thankful she was wearing her padded flak vest or his face would be bright red with her large breasts pressed tightly against his back. Getting the address from the Anbu, the blonde set off for her apartment. On the way, he was deep in thought as Anko instinctively tightened her arms around his neck and snuggled her cheek against the boy's soft hair. So we get to where we felt your chakra only to find 3 men attacking Anko-san here. Was that a coincidence or did what happened just now have something to do with your chakra suddenly flaring up? I think it's somewhere on this woman's body because the chakra died down just when she fell unconscious. I can still feel a small trace of it in her body now that she's close to you. I wonder why she would willingly carry it on her body. Your chakra burns everyone except me. One of the bastards said she was associated with Orochimaru. The one who likes to experiment on humans. If she was dumped by Orochimaru like these men said, it's easy enough to deduce that he did some experiments on her and tried something with my chakra just to see what it could do. Again, I wonder why I'm the evil one when you humans have someone like that thing running around. You think that hubby Tem might have forced it on her somehow. Then that means there's a seal somewhere. That's the only way I can think of that would make your chakra at least coexist within a normal human's body. And this isn't a very good seal because she certainly was in a lot of pain before falling unconscious when we still sensed your chakra. This raises a couple questions. How the hell did that snake get his hand on your chakra? Was anyone even able to collect it? We'll figure that out sooner or later. Back to the matter at hand, you know what we need to do, Naruto. We'll have to search for the seal and break it to absorb my chakra into your body. My old chakra will be naturally attracted to my presence, so you will need to channel my chakra into her body, and the best way to do that is to bite her on the seal with my chakra active. It's not a gentle or even probably the best method, but we need this to get stronger. If not for our sake, then to absolve this female of any further suffering. Yeah, though I'm sure Hokage Gigi will be pissed at me, and then Ero Sennin will pummel me into nothingness after this for doing something so reckless without enough preparation. Let's get her home first. Apartment of the Purple Sisters. A few minutes later, Naruto gingerly opened the front door and sighed in relief to find the apartment empty. He searched around for a light switch before turning it on to show a surprisingly well-decorated living room. I wouldn't mind living here compared to the shithole we live in. Focus. Put her down on that couch and we'll get started. We'd better hurry. From the photos on the wall, Anko-san lives with another person. I'd hate to have to explain why I was doing various things to Anko-san if she walks in on us. Naruto quickly and gently laid her down on the couch. He had a little bit of trouble when Anko wouldn't let go of her grip around his neck, hungrily grasping for any close contact she could get. As soon as she let go, she began to wail and groan in pain as she started to clutch uselessly at a certain spot on her neck. Naruto and Kurama also felt the familiar presence of the fox's chakra intensify again. Confused, the blonde looked at where Anko was clutching at and saw a small piece of a seal. Immediately, he had a clone pop into existence to hold her down while he unzipped her flak vest just enough to reveal 3 tomos surrounded by an odd circle of intricate seals. I've never seen the three tomos part, but I know that circle. One of the books I read calls it the evil sealing method technique. It must have been put in place to keep the seal from acting up depending on the user's willpower. Whatever these guys did to weaken her earlier tonight must have also weakened her willpower enough to have this seal flare up high enough for us to sense it. That's why we never noticed this when we met her before now. Unfortunately for Anko-san, I'll have to remove this barrier to allow us access to your chakra. It might hurt her badly for a few minutes until we finally get your chakra out of her. Something tells me she wouldn't mind if she could be rid of this afterward. Naruto nodded inwardly as he remembered the details of the evil sealing method technique from the books. It was a pain to set up, requiring an entire sealing room to write seals on the floor with the person at the center. However, in comparison, it was shockingly simple to dispel the seal. All he needed to do was to go through several hand seals as a password, before channeling a lot of chakra into the barrier to break it. Usually a good sealmaster would invent his or her own password with their own seals, but he didn't think that was the case here. However, before he could begin, he created 4 clones to have them go around the living room, closing doors and windows before they took some papers from Naruto to draw some seals. Before long, the clones slapped a seal on each of the room's 4 walls, effectively keeping everything that happened in the room from getting out: sound, sight, smell, and more importantly, chakra. No one outside would be able to detect whatever was happening in here, and Naruto would need that for what was coming up. Before we begin, I want to make sure you're not feeling forced to do this. While we need the chakra inside this woman's body to make it easier for you to control my chakra, we can wait for another way of obtaining my yin-infused chakra now that we know it can still exist. There's also a small chance we may not succeed in retrieving the chakra and make things worse for this woman. I feel like we're invading Anko-san's privacy doing this, and she may hate me after this, but I just can't stand to see her suffering like this. Naruto thought as he watched Anko continue to whimper and cry out as if she was having a horrible nightmare. He hadn't realized he was holding one of her hands to try to comfort her. He then furrowed his brows in determination after a minute of consideration. I'm willing to take the chance, and I think we need to do this. I don't care if we don't get the chakra. As long as she can be free of this, I'd be happy no matter how she'd react after this. Kurama nodded in understanding before she got back to business. Naruto. Remove that flak vest. It's going to get in the way. What? She's practically naked under that. After tonight, the last thing she needs is another guy to see her like this. Forget about modesty. This is more important to both us and her. I'm sure she'll forgive you afterward if this works. Grumbling, Naruto relented and peeled the jacket off with the help of his clones. All Narutos were now sporting red cheeks at seeing Anko in her beautiful purple-laced bra. After getting over their initial awkwardness, Naruto had 2 of his clones keep her propped up as he stood behind her, preparing to remove the barrier. Slowly clapping his hands together in seals, he molded the chakra necessary and slapped a palm to Anko's mark. Naruto could feel something underneath his hand disappear, and he removed it to reveal just the 3 tomos this time. Immediately, Anko screamed to the high heaven in unbearable pain and involuntarily thrashed around so much she accidentally dispelled the 2 clones holding her up. Naruto could see the 3 tomos expanding outward and began to turn into sinister-looking marks that were slowly spreading down her back. Naruto, do it now. Channel some of my chakra into your mouth and bite down on the mark hard. Not having any time to think, Naruto immediately grabbed the thrashing Anko from behind to keep her in place and pulled her head to the side with a hand tightly gripping her purple hair, exposing her neck. As his teeth grew into fangs upon channeling Kurama's chakra into his mouth, he bit down hard on Anko's neck where the mark was. The woman immediately stopped her thrashing and opened her eyes and mouth wide with a gasp, then she sat stock still. Tasting a little bit of her blood going into his mouth, Naruto could feel Kurama's chakra quickly shoot into the seal. He could feel it destroy whatever was tainting the fox's old chakra before he then began to absorb the chakra with both yang and yin essences into his own body. This all happened in a span of few seconds, but it felt like days to him. As soon as he felt the last of the fox's chakra leave Anko's body, he quickly took his mouth off her neck. He saw the 3 tomos begin to break apart, and then it disappeared from her skin. Anko's eyes closed as she let out a relieved moan and fell back limply against Naruto, still unconscious, now completely still and breathing evenly. He wasn't sure she was even actually awake for the whole thing, despite her eyes having been open at one point. He had to allow another blush when Anko instinctively turned around in his arms looking for comfort and wrapped her arms tightly around his neck, pressing her bountiful breasts against his chest and nuzzling her nose in the nape of his neck. Stuttering, he had to order the two remaining, and giggling, clones to carefully pry her off him. Smiling at his success despite the recklessness, he and the clones laid the purple-haired Chunin on the sofa and found a blanket nearby to drape over her, preserving her modesty. Now, quickly get out of here and get home. That was the easy part. You just took on my pure and unfiltered chakra with both yin and yang essences. My chakra has always been somewhat filtered by the seal before it went into your body, and it will hurt like hell when the chakra you just absorbed straight into your own body begin to merge with your chakra system. You'll wish you'd die, but you won't be able to. Naruto had to grimace at that. However, after this, your body should now be adapted to the new yin essence if it all works out. Hopefully when you channel some of my chakra through your body it'll automatically trigger an actual transformation. Even I don't know what kind of changes that'll affect, so it's an uncharted territory for us both from here on. Now that I know my old chakra can still exist, it's imperative we look for more of it. The more yin essence you take in, the better the effect this will have on your transformations. That's my theory, anyway. Naruto nodded before he began to feel a twinge of pain in his chest. Sighing, he ordered his two remaining clones to help him take down the seals. Just as they were about to leave the apartment half a minute later, Naruto turned at the doorway to gaze at Anko one more time. He smiled when he saw how she was sleeping peacefully but whimpering slightly for the physical contact she had from earlier. Before he could turn around to leave, he suddenly collapsed at the doorway, his entire body shaking in growing agony spreading out from his chest. "Boss. What's wrong?" one of the clones cried as they went to his side. "Get me home. I need to get there before this gets worse or I leave myself open for anything in the meantime," Naruto ordered through gritted teeth. Nodding to each other, both clones picked up Naruto by his arms and they all disappeared in a shunshin. Naruto's apartment. Upon arriving, the clones dropped Naruto to the floor as his entire body thrashed around as if was on fire. The white-hot fire of hell, too. Put seals up, the original forced through between pained pants. The clones quickly obeyed and within seconds, his entire living room was encased in a privacy barrier. At that point, the clones dispelled and he allowed himself to scream like there was no tomorrow, his chakra leaking from all over his body. All Kurama could do was offer soothing words for his fading consciousness. Next morning Naruto shifted his body, sprawled out on the living room floor, as he forced his heavy eyelids open, only to grunt in annoyance when the morning sunlight shone into his eyes from a window nearby. "Oh fuck me. That was not pleasant," he grumbled as he tried to stretch only to flinch from pain all over his body. "Naruto, you're okay. I was a little worried there for a minute." Kurama's voice suddenly spoke up. "I still feel like crap, but looks like I survived my first shot of your chakra. I even feel a bit different too." "Really? Where?" "I wasn't expecting the effects to be that immediate. I'm not sure. I just know I feel a bit sharper and more clear in the head." Naruto murmured in his head as he draped an arm over his head to block out sunlight from the window, absent-mindedly enjoying the feeling of soft fur on his forehead with his eyes closed. "Wait a minute. Soft fur." He quickly moved his arm to look at it in full view. And his mind loudly grinded to a halt in numb shock as he stared intensely at it. More specifically, his forearm. His arm was normal up to that point, and then it was suddenly covered in crimson fur all the way down to his fingertips, now sharpened into long and deadly claws. Bringing his hand up in front of his face to flex it, showing incredibly defined muscles even underneath all the fur, there was only one thought for both Naruto and Kurama inside him. Holy shit. Holy shit. Immediately afterward, there was loud knocking at the front door. The blonde flinched and snapped his head toward the offending door. "Oh shit. Oh shit. Hope you enjoyed the revision. It became more extensive than I expected, mostly because I decided to add 4 more scenes at the last minute. They were the 2 with Kakashi in the summer training, 1 with Ino in the flower shop because I thought she needed more interaction with Naruto, and what I hoped to be a funny scene with the class's sex education. I'm not sure if I did that right, so I might change it. To answer any question about Kurama's chakra being in Enko's curse seal, remember, this was a prototype seal in canon as Orochimaru experimented on Enko with it to see if it'd work. This was before Orochimaru discovered Jugo's unique chakra and used that to make the seal for Sasuke and the others. I just took liberty with making Kurama's old chakra a major part of the experimental seal in this story. If you still have any question or complaint about that, I'd be happy to answer anything, although the next chapter will elaborate on this a bit more. One more thing, I have no intention of turning Naruto in a half-demon or have his condition be permanent. The transformation is just that, a temporary transformation to boost one's attributes. So any listener with an aversion to that kind of stories can rest easy on this one. Smiley face. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.